Hi, my name is Miss Baki, and this is my English 1 ninth grade classroom. This is how my desks are usually set up for a normal day-to-day. You do see it changing up quite a bit if we work in groups. I might make these each into groups of 4 or groups of 6 or even conference tables. And you'll see this change up a little bit today as we do our first Socratic seminar. Just to give you a little tour of my classroom so you can kind of see how things are run. Right over here I have a quote of the day, and so every single day we have a different quote. It could be an inspirational quote, it could be related to one of the texts that we're reading, but I think this is a really good conversational piece to kind of start out each day, and we sometimes reflect on the quotes in our writer's notebooks as well. My students, during their individual reading, if they come across a quote that they really like, or just kind of in their everyday, they can write it in our quote book right here, and so I actually see students all the time grabbing this and writing in their own quotes that they hope to be featured on our quote of the day. Moving on, right now we are reading Romeo and Juliet, and so I have kind of just a timeline of events on my board right over here. Over here we have our classroom norms, and this is what I set up with each of my classes individually on the first day of school, where I ask them to kind of think about what type of learning environment that they want to be a part of, and what expectations that they have for their peers, for their teacher, and for themselves. And we essentially just have a conversation about it, and we discuss kind of, what a good classroom looks like and how we can feel most comfortable in that atmosphere. And we always reference back to this, and this becomes essentially our classroom contract together. And then on the back they sign it, so they kind of all agree upon this being how our classroom is run together. Right over here I have my absent folder, so when students are gone I just put their name on a piece of paper and put it in these folders so that they know exactly what they need. And even some orphan papers for students who leave their papers behind or leave their papers without a name. I have my turn-in trays right here, and down here I actually have my paper copies of each student's writing portfolios. So we also have digital portfolios on Google Sites, but students keep all their writing in their individual folders, and this is where they can keep essentially all their feedback in one place. So we have samples of their analytical paragraphs here. We have their writing checklists that they can use. We have rubrics in here, and essentially just all that feedback that they keep for everything that we've written and all their rubrics. So I like to make sure that my students keep their writing organized so we can always improve. Over here is my technology station. This is where I will project from my computer, and also I use my document camera almost every single day as I write along with my students and use mentor texts to kind of help them move forward with their own writing. Over here I have my essential questions, understandings, and objectives, personal classroom library, and then this is where my students keep their own reading books because they do read every single day their own self-chosen novels. And then they also keep their writer's notebooks in here if they want. And this is something that we use every single day in my classroom. So this is essentially a collection of all of their workings from my English class. So they start out and they have a table of contents with all of the things that we've done with the date and page number. And they have reading logs and writing logs, and it's separated by sections. They have their notes in here. They have brainstorming, free writes. They might have notes on archetypes and plot structure, and so that they know that they can find everything that they need in just one place. Over here I have some sample projects that my students just turned in. We finished reading Animal Farm by George Orwell, and students had choices as to how they wanted to present their project. So some students wrote essays, some students created their own allegories, and some students wrote their own propaganda speech. And these are all from the students who chose to write an allegory, and they could have presented it in whatever way they wanted. And so these students created book covers for their allegories that they created, which I thought were really fantastic. And some students even brought props and created props for their stories. Over here is just my desk setup. Nothing too special about it. I have a lovely view right here of some dumpsters. And then just right over here at the end, my students can find any extra copies of any of the works that I hand out. So if they need another text or they messed up on theirs, need a new one, they know where to find it here in the extras. And we have some updates listed on my bulletin board, including copies of my syllabi, which are also posted on my online Schoology page. So I do use Schoology as my online classroom as well as Google Sites. And then here are just some sample poems that my students just turned in, where they got to create their own poem about choices after reading Robert Frost's The Road Not Taken. Yeah, they did a really great job. All right, well, thank you for coming along with me on my classroom tour today, and let's see it in action. Today you'll see a few lessons. In one of my classes, we are finishing up Romeo and Juliet and focusing on some analytical writing and understanding the complexities of Shakespeare's language. And then in my other class, my students had to read a short story called The Necklace and come with some analytical questions prepared. Because today they are actually doing their very first Socratic seminar. So you get to kind of see how we get that set up and how my students will learn how to have these intellectual discussions for the very first time. So I invite you to come along and kind of see how things are run here. Good afternoon, class.
Good afternoon, Miss Hockey.
How are you lovelies today?
Tired. Could have been good.
I'm so happy that you look so welcoming and ready to learn. Are we excited to finish Romeo and Juliet today?
Yeah.
See what happens?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes to look over your Shakespearean language terms, and then we're going to do a quick quiz. And then I'm going to give you guys some time to finish up your analytical questions from Act 3. And then we're going to read some scenes from Act 3, and then we're going to wrap up and summarize Act 4. And then we'll get to Act 5 tomorrow.
So we're going to finish it tomorrow?
Yeah. All right, get started. All right, so if you're in the inner circle for Group 1, right now I'm passing out a handout, and on here it gives you guys some rules for Socratic and some question stems. So if you're someone that's like maybe a little bit shy, or you don't know what you want to say, or you kind of feel a little bit awkward, you can come to this and kind of flip through and see some of these question stems. All right, so just remember the general rules, right? So we're going to discuss, not debate, about the necklace. We're going to be courteous, no put downs. Make sure that you're not talking over one another, and make sure that you engage somebody if they have gone about 10 minutes and haven't spoken yet. So what is your job if you're in the middle? Okay, your job is to answer your given question, which is question number 18. Is it pride which prevents the Loisels from telling Madame Forrestal they've lost her necklace? If so, whose pride is it, or is it something else? So this is going to be y'all's guiding question for this discussion today, okay? But that does not mean that this question is the only thing that you guys have to discuss. So if you feel like you've answered your question and you kind of feel like you've said all you can say about it, that's when you guys can move on to some of these other responses that you already have written down and kind of say something.
Broke husbandman, I should be like in a castle. And I think that's where she's really impressed. Like, he's doing everything he can. Like right here, when she was asking for the dress, he grew slightly pale. This was exactly the same amount he was saving for a gem, intending to get a little shooting next summer on the plain of Nantier with some friends who were lark shooting there on summer.
I think she's not necessarily greedy, but I think she's more vain than greedy. On line 11 and 12, she says she greedy.
Hey guys, okay, so things I need from you in just a second. First, I need y'all to find your seat. You'll turn in your stuff in just a second. Alright, I do want to discuss a few things overall that I liked before the bell rings. Thank you, Dakota. Dakota is collecting your observation sheets. In a second, y'all are going to pass up. Hey guys, I'll wait. I don't want to talk over you. My volume should not be this loud. Okay. So your analytical responses that you've written, you're going to pass those up in just a second. Okay, I'll collect them. And Dakota is collecting the observation sheets. But for the bell rings, I want to go over some things that I really liked that I saw overall in your group, and some things that we can improve on. Okay, so how can we build on our experience today with the Socratic? I would recommend asking one person for clarification, if they say something that's confusing, and then asking the whole group for their opinions. I saw a few times you were like kind of narrowing it on one person, like Fatima, what's your opinion on this, right? And so you should be asking the opinions of the entire group as a whole, and then maybe asking one person for clarification. That way we don't have to kind of put anybody on the spot. You don't have to start off with every response with I agree with or I disagree with. You can vary up that sentence structure a bit by saying stuff like, you know what, the character actually really does demonstrate that because, or maybe even saying something like, oh, you know, I actually found it really interesting because, that kind of stuff. Don't just agree with what they said. I agree with what you said. Here's my opinion. What was it that they said that you agreed with? Right? Everyone's speaking and saying a lot of different things. So if you're discussing, you know, what you're agreeing with, just make sure you're specific so that we know how what you're saying is connected. Overall, more references to the text would be great and add strengthening to your discussion. In outer circle, no talking. I heard the talking in the outer circle. Okay? Some wonderful things that happened. I saw y'all bringing others into the conversation. Some people that maybe had spoken that much, y'all really brought them right on into the conversation. Preparation was definitely demonstrated. We didn't even really discuss the necklace that much in class, and y'all took it out on your own, you analyzed it yourself, and you brought to the table a lot of really great insight. Okay? You were wonderfully respectful to one another, and I was like, oh, you're like, oh, pardon me for interrupting, so sorry. I love that. You made familiar connections, and you related it to things that we understood, so I saw that maybe 2 or 3 times. I really want to see those outside connections a bit more, but that was fantastic. And lastly, the discussion and story related to our own current society and lives. When y'all did that, you related it back to kind of your own point of view. That's what I loved the most, and that was the point. Okay, so one consecutive snap for everybody. 1, 2, 3. So good. All right, pass your papers real fast. Y'all have a great day.
Charlie, everything you said I agree with. I wanted someone to mention that. Always be honest. I was like, please someone mention that.
Oh yeah, no, defending everyone else's point. I looked down and I was like, wait, I think the more was always be honest.
Yeah,
I was like,
you're right. I had the same thing.
Don't walk off with those serious, man. They have so many other
It's just some second grade.
I love how I had a moral switch in there. Like, I was defending, like, the other morals, and I recognized that wasn't my moral.
Well, the thing is, though,